know the feeling. Recycled air, the droning hum that vibrates in your bones, the crying baby 3 rows back. It's the purgatory of modern travel. I was on the last leg of a business trip, exhausted, just wanting it to be over. That's when the cold started. It wasn't the normal airplane chill. This was a deep, wet cold that felt like it was coming from inside the plane's metal skin. It settled right next to me, in the empty seat by the window. I tried to ignore it, pulling my jacket tighter. But then I saw the frost. A perfect, impossible circle of it, forming on the inside of the window. I leaned over, my breath catching in my throat. And I saw a face in the reflection. Not mine. It was a man, pale and terrified, his mouth open in a silent scream, looking in from the blackness outside. I slammed back into my seat, my heart trying to beat its way out of my chest. The call button ... I had to press the call button ... The red-eye to Tokyo. I've done this flight 100 times. It becomes a kind of waking dream. The cabin lights are dimmed, the air hums with a steady, hypnotic drone, and the passengers become a single breathing entity, lost in sleep. You walk the aisles like a ghost yourself, a silent guardian in a metal tube suspended between worlds. Every flight leaves its own faint imprint. A child's forgotten teddy bear, the lingering scent of an old woman's perfume, the smudges on a window where someone stared out at the endless night. You get used to the feeling of being surrounded by the ghosts of journeys past, but tonight feels different. There's a coldness in the air that has nothing to do with the altitude. A static, a weight. It's a feeling I've never had before. A sense of profound wrongness hiding just beneath the familiar hum of the engines. It's probably just exhaustion. It has to be. Up here, at 35,000 feet, you learn to trust the routine, the solid mechanics of the aircraft. You have to. Because if you start believing in anything else, the 5 miles of empty air beneath your feet suddenly feels a lot less empty. It started with the call button, a soft electronic chime that cut through the cabin's drone. I glanced at the overhead panel. Seat 13A. I sighed, grabbing a bottle of water, already running through the usual requests in my head. But when I got there, the seat was empty. The seat belt was neatly buckled over a vacant space. I checked the seats next to it, a young couple, fast asleep. I looked up at the light. It was definitely 13A. My first thought was a system glitch. These planes are workhorses, not miracles. Wires fray, sensors fail. I reached up and pressed the button, extinguishing the light. As I did, a blast of Arctic cold washed over me, so intense it made my teeth ache. It vanished in a second. I stood there, my hands still in the air, feeling the blood drain from my face. That's when I saw it on the seat's fabric, a small, dark, damp patch, as if someone had just been sitting there. I told myself it was condensation from the air system. I told myself it was a glitch. I walked back to the galley, my heart hammering a frantic, irregular rhythm against my ribs. I was lying to myself, and I knew it. I tried to put it out of my mind, busying myself with inventory checks, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I felt a gaze on me, cold and insistent. Against my better judgment, I peered out from the galley, down the long, dark aisle, and I saw him. He was sitting in seat 13A, staring directly at me. He was a middle-aged man in a simple business suit, his hair slightly damp. But his face? It was the color of bleached bone. His lips a faint, terrifying blue. His eyes were the worst part. They were wide, full of a desperate, pleading terror that seemed to pin me to the spot. The other passengers slept on, oblivious. I was the only one who could see him. A wave of vertigo hit me. My training, my rational mind, screamed at me. It's a hallucination. a waking nightmare brought on by fatigue. But my instincts screamed something else. He wasn't a dream. He was real, and he was dead. I ducked back into the galley, pressing my back against the cold metal wall, my breath catching in my throat. The plane felt like a coffin, and I was trapped inside with a corpse. My mind was racing, trying to find a logical anchor in a sea of insanity. The manifest. The passenger manifest was my only link to objective reality. If he was a passenger, he would be on the list. I shakily pulled out the tablet, my fingers fumbling with the login. I scrolled down the list of names, my eyes scanning for the seat number. Section 12? Section 14? There was no Section 13. I remembered then. The airline, like many, skipped the number 13 for superstitious reasons. The seat physically existed, but it was never assigned. It was never supposed to have a passenger. My blood ran cold. I scrolled through the entire list, name by name, matching them to the faces I remembered from boarding. Every single person was accounted for. Every single seat, except that one, was assigned. The manifest, my anchor to reality, had just confirmed my nightmare. The man in 13A wasn't a passenger. He wasn't a hallucination. He was something else entirely. Something that didn't follow the rules of the living. He was an impossible, terrifying glitch in the system, and he was on my flight. I had to see him again. I had to know. Steeling myself, I walked slowly down the aisle, pretending to check on the sleeping passengers. My heart pounded with every step. As I approached row 13, the temperature plummeted again. The air grew thick and heavy with the smell of ozone, like the air after a lightning strike. He was still there, but he wasn't looking at me anymore. He was turned toward the window, his pale hand pressed against the triple-paned glass. The cold emanating from him was so intense that a perfect, ghostly circle of frost had formed on the inside of the window around his palm. He was staring out into the absolute blackness of the night sky, his body rigid with some unseen terror. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, he dragged his finger through the frost. He wasn't writing. He was carving a single, jagged word into the ice. F-I-U-L-T. Fault. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a curse. It was a warning. He wasn't trying to scare me. He was trying to tell me something was wrong. Horribly, catastrophically wrong. I ran to the senior flight attendant, Sarah, a veteran of 30 years. I didn't tell her I was seeing a ghost. I started with a lie, saying a passenger in row 14 felt an unusual cold spot. As I spoke, her face went pale. She pulled me into the galley and lowered her voice. "This aircraft," she whispered, "we almost had it taken out of rotation. On the flight from Honolulu yesterday, a man died. A massive, sudden heart attack. She didn't have to tell me the seat number. I already knew. His name was Arthur Jensen, an aeronautical engineer. He was flying home to attend a safety review for this exact model of aircraft. They said he was agitated the whole flight, kept staring out the window, muttering about stress tests and mental fatigue. The official report was a heart attack, but Sarah said the look on his face when they found him wasn't one of pain. It was one of absolute, bone-deep terror. He hadn't died of a heart attack. He had died of fright, and he had never gotten off the plane. As Sarah's words hung in the air, the plane suddenly lurched with a violent tremor of turbulence. The lights flickered, and a low, groaning sound echoed through the fuselage. And then the ghost was right in front of me, his face inches from mine. His eyes were no longer pleading. They were screaming. The world dissolved into a nightmare. I wasn't in the galley anymore. I was outside the plane, in the freezing, roaring chaos of the slipstream. I saw the left wing, groaning under an immense, invisible pressure. I saw a hairline fracture near the engine mount, a tiny black line spreading like a spiderweb across the metal skin. Then came a sound I will never forget, the sound of metal screaming, tearing, surrendering. I saw the wing rip away from the body of the plane, and for a horrifying, silent moment, we just fell. I felt the sickening lurch of gravity, heard the cries of the passengers, saw the world spinning into a blur of fire and darkness. Then, just as suddenly, I was back in the galley, gasping for air, the vision gone. It wasn't a memory of what had been. It was a prophecy of what was about to be. I burst into the cockpit. The two pilots, a stoic captain and his younger co-pilot, looked at me with alarm. Protocol reason, the fear of losing my job, it all vanished. I was babbling, a frantic, hysterical mess, talking about a ghost, a vision, a fault in the left wing. I could see it in their eyes. They thought I had lost my mind. The captain tried to calm me down, his voice laced with that infuriating, placating tone you use for a panicked passenger. The turbulence is normal for this sector, he said. The aircraft is fine. I pleaded with them, tears streaming down my face, describing the fracture, the exact location. The co-pilot ran a quick system diagnostic. All green, Captain, he said, giving me a look of pity. I was the crazy woman, the hysterical flight attendant seeing ghosts in the dark. They were about to call for security to restrain me. I was screaming at them, begging them to just look, but they were trained to trust their instruments, not a mad woman's ravings. And the instruments all said we were perfectly safe. Just as the captain reached for the intercom to have me removed, the plane was rocked by another, far more violent shudder. A high-pitched alarm began to shriek through the cockpit. A red light flashed on the main control panel. Wing stress. Fault. The co-pilot's face went white. Captain, he stammered. At that exact moment, the primary navigation screen, which should have been showing our flight path, flickered and distorted. For a split second, an image burned onto the screen, a ghostly, terrified face. Arthur Jensen's face. It stared out from the machine, its silent scream finally visible to them all. That's what broke them. The impossible, undeniable ghost in the machine. Declare an emergency, the captain said, his voice a strained whisper. His eyes locked on the screen. Find the nearest airport. Get us out of the sky. Now. In that moment, the sterile logic of the cockpit was shattered by a truth far older and far more terrifying. They had seen it too. They finally believed me. We landed at a remote emergency airstrip in Alaska. The passengers, woken by the descent, complained about the delay, completely unaware that they had just been saved from a fiery grave. As the first rays of dawn hit the tarmac, the ground crew did their inspection, and there it was. A catastrophic near-total fracture in the primary wing spar, hidden beneath the engine housing, exactly where I saw it, exactly where he saw it. The engineers said we shouldn't have survived the last patch of turbulence. It was a miracle the wing had held on at all. They escorted me off the plane, away from the questioning crew and the stunned pilots. As I walked down the steps, I took one last look back at the aircraft, shimmering in the morning light. I glanced up at window 13A. There was no one there. The cold was gone. The sense of dread was gone. Arthur Jensen had finally delivered his warning. His flight was over. He was at peace. I, on the other hand, don't think I'll ever be at peace. Again, I don't fly anymore. I can't, because now I know the truth. Sometimes, the ghosts are the only things holding the plane together.